Everyone, I'm Linda Czipo. I'm President and CEO of the Center for Nonprofits. Welcome to Voter Engagement in a Pandemic, How Your Nonprofit Can Help, presented by the Center in partnership with the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. We are grateful to you for taking the time to join us today in what has been a very busy webinar day all around. The Center for Nonprofits is New Jersey's state association for the nonprofit community. For those of you not familiar with us, since 1982, the Center strengthened New Jersey's nonprofits individually and collectively to improve the quality of life for the people of our state. And our programs include advocacy, education, professional training, expert information and referral, cost-saving membership programs, and much more. Feel free to check our website to find out more. We also have a comprehensive COVID-19 resource page, which you can access through the main web address as well. The Center is a member of the National Council of Nonprofits, which is the nation's largest nonprofit network. The Council of Nonprofits is an advocate, central coordinator, and mobilizer to help nonprofits achieve greater collective impact in local communities across the country. If your organization is a member of the Center for Nonprofits, you are also a member of the National Council of Nonprofits. If you are a member of the Center, we thank you for supporting our work and for involving yourself in our activities as we pursue this work together. If you're not a member, we hope you'll consider joining. Membership offers you access to a wide array of benefits and discounts, and it helps to amplify the collective work of the nonprofit community. And we have a special discount offer going on right now. If you join by August 31st and use the discount code ADVOCATE, you can save 10% off of your dues for the next year. So we hope you will consider that. One of the Center's signature programs is our annual conference. This is the largest annual conference for nonprofits in the state. It combines forward-thinking insights with great connections and practical tools and takeaways. As with so many others, due to COVID-19, we've had to rethink our conference, but we're excited to announce that we will be conducting it virtually. So save the dates for December 2nd and 3rd. You will be finding out more in very short order. Stay tuned, and we are working very, very hard to make sure that the virtual conference is every bit as memorable and thought-provoking as you have been led to expect. I'm going to be bookending today's session, and joining us behind the scenes are my colleagues Susan Merrill O'Connor, the Center's Director of Communications, and Caitlin Giles McCormick, our Program Coordinator. And I believe we're also joined by Kathy Hahn, our Office Administrator. We are so thrilled to be partnering with the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, and Jesse Burns and Alyssa Moreno will be sharing their insights a little bit later. Today, we're going to cover some refreshers about some do's and don'ts for 501c3s and in the election season, and then I'll turn things over to Jesse and Alyssa to talk about voter registration, vote by mail, voter education, and some other voter education items, and then we'll be wrapping up, and there are some calls to action at the end, so please stay with us. We do have a lot to cover, but we're recording the session, and you will receive a link to the recording along with the slides and other follow-up information by email within the next day or so. If you have questions or technical difficulties, please enter your question into the chat box, and feel free to ask any substantive questions at any time. We do have a couple of periods where we will pause for Q&A, but if there's something that we can't address during the presentation, we will do our best to follow up afterward. Finally, before we dive in, this is not a legal presentation. This is not legal advice. If you need legal advice or a specific consultation regarding your circumstances, please contact a knowledgeable attorney. If you need suggestions about great exempt organization attorneys, we can certainly provide them. Congressman Lewis said it best. In a democracy, your vote is sacred. It's one of the most important and fundamental actions that a citizen in the democracy can take. If we're trying to shape the government to be responsive to our needs, voting is a fundamental way of doing that. It's one of the most important powers that individual people have. We know that there is so much at stake right now. We're living in a tumultuous time, and our social and democratic norms are being tested every single day. And as nonprofits, we have a really important role to play in ensuring or encouraging people to come out and vote. We have a lot of issues at stake from a nonprofit perspective as well, regardless of the kinds of issues you're involved with. There are The whole purpose of this session is to show you how much you can do and remain nonpartisan as a 501c3. So hope we'll give you some good tools and food for thought, and perhaps some refreshers as well. Here is, yes, you can be involved in voter engagement activity as a 501c3 public charity if you know the rules and if you follow them. So a basic refresher about the rules. First and foremost, there are some things that as a 501c3 you are not allowed to do. And once you know those and can set those aside, it makes the rest of the roadmap a little bit easier. So first and foremost, electioneering. Attempting to influence the election or defeat of a candidate for public office is absolutely forbidden. It can cost you your tax exemption if you do it. So you certainly want to stay away from that as a 501c3. You have to stay nonpartisan. So you can't coordinate your voter engagement efforts with a particular party or with an entity that's trying to influence the election of a candidate for public office. Activities, again, are not allowed for 501c3s. There are a whole bunch of activities that could get you into trouble if you're aligning yourself with one party or the other, or you're trying to encourage people to even indirectly support one candidate or party or another. So nonpartisanship is the watchword of the day, but on your own time, individually, on your own dime, not under the auspices of your organization. If it's scrupulously separate, then you can do those kinds of things. You can run for office, you can campaign, you can contribute, all of those kinds of things, but you have to keep it completely separate from your 501c3 organization. A lot of the crux of today's session, there are a lot of things you can do as long as you follow some safeguards: voter registration, education, get out the vote, transportation to the polls to the extent that they are going to be happening in person this year. You can send position statements to candidates. You can't coordinate with them, or there are other things you have to be more careful about. But everything you do has to be structured to avoid bias toward one candidate or party or another. If you have questions about this, we can get into them in more detail, and we have a lot of materials and whatnot from the center to help you with this, but just be aware on that. So as you're pursuing this work, here are just some of the guideposts that you need to be aware of. Stay nonpartisan. You have to avoid bias, direct or implied, toward or against one candidate or party. You can't formally or informally coordinate with candidates, parties, or political action committees. Include disclaimers. If you're doing this work, include disclaimers just to reiterate that your organization you're a nonpartisan organization and you don't support candidates. And again, anything you want to do individually has to be on your own time, on your own dime, and not use the organization's name or resources in any way. One other thing that comes up a lot, because it's not the same thing, a referendum or a ballot question is permissible for a 501c3 public charity. It counts as lobbying, it's not electioneering. So charities are allowed to engage in lobbying, it's just limited, so you have to follow the rules regarding legislative lobbying. You have to, again, keep it separate from anybody's work on candidate elections, because again, you have to stay away from that. But if you are, and there are several important ballot questions on to be decided this year in New Jersey, including the redistricting question, the legalization of marijuana, to name just two. So if you're involved in these or any other issue regarding ballot questions, if your organization spends more than $1,600 to influence the outcome, then there are some additional registration requirements with the Election Law Enforcement Commission. So if you need more information about that, let us know. But that's a really important distinction. Trying to influence a ballot question is not the same as trying to elect or defeat a candidate. Jesse and Alyssa will be getting into this in more detail, but we know, of course, that everything has changed with respect to the pandemic and what is going on, what the rules are, and what's effective in terms of nonpartisan voter engagement. Nonprofit Vote is one resource that is really, they offer a ton of great tools and webinars and whatnot on nonprofits and voter engagement, particularly C3s and voter engagement. They did a webinar fairly recently that talks about a lot of digital tools that organizations can use. So there are a lot of electronic apps and other things that have been created, some really interesting stuff. But you can also do a lot of other things like using your online networks, partner with those entities that are operating in person, food pantries, hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot that you can do here, and you'll be hearing more about that in just a minute. But the other, again, follow the guiding principles. You have to stay nonpartisan. You have to coordinate with other entities that are staying nonpartisan. That's really, really important. And if you keep that in mind as you're going along, that will help a lot. So just by way of a reminder, you can conduct nonpartisan voter education and engagement activities as a 501c3 public charity. You may not be involved in electioneering or partisan political activities, or as an organization contribute to candidates, committees, or parties. You are allowed to talk about advocacy, advocating on the issues of the day without limit, and you can do lobbying within certain limits, and those limits are pretty generous. We've spoken about that at the Center for Nonprofits quite a bit. We have a lot of resources available on that, but this is just to remind you that there is a lot that you can do in this space if you haven't been doing it already, and just knowing what those limits are and what the guideposts are will help you feel more safe to be involved in this activity. Before you embark on this, if you haven't done this already, you need to be sure that you have the commitment of your leadership, your executive staff, your board. You should have your board adopt resolutions to reiterate your nonpartisan motivations for being involved in this work. There are a number of entities that can provide resource samples and whatnot. The league might be able to do that as well. Again, understand the rules, review and comply with any of your government contracts or your private grant restrictions. Some of them do not want you, a lot of government contracts don't want you involved in this at all. And some private grant may also have restrictions. So look at all of that, make sure that you are funding these activities from a source that is appropriate to do that. And finally, training is absolutely essential so that your team understands where the boundaries are, what the rules are, and what they can be doing so that everyone's on the same page. Now, what I'd like to do is turn things over to our colleagues. Jesse Burns is the Executive Director of the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, and Alyssa Moreno is the Civic Engagement Coordinator. And we are so excited to be able to partner with them on this session. The League has been working for many years, generations, to protect voting rights, to strengthen our democracy, but they're also involved in so many other things. They're a resource on really important issues. So I can't say enough about the work that they do and how excited we are to have them present today. So I'm just going to switch presenters, and I will let you take it away.
Thank you. So, welcome everyone. I'm Alyssa Moreno, Civic Engagement Coordinator for the League of Women Voters of New Jersey, and here with us is Jesse Burns. Jesse, do you want to introduce yourself?
Executive Director. I just want to say thank you to the attendees here today and to the Center for Nonprofits for putting this on. The League of Women Voters of New Jersey is celebrating our 100th anniversary this year, and I've been in this space for a little over a decade. And the Center for Nonprofits has been a really valuable resource to us. If you're not a member, I do encourage everybody to join. It is a very important resource for all nonprofits in the state. So thank you so much for having us.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
and we're thrilled to be here, like connecting with you all on how to best integrate nonpartisan voter education with the work that you already do. So there are many barriers to getting registered to vote that may not initially be that obvious. A barrier can be as simple as not having access to a printer to be able to print and mail your form, to as complex as systematic forms of voter suppression. These barriers vary state by state. In New Jersey, obstacles to registering include early voter registration deadlines, lack of voter education, and the current inability to register to vote online. Barriers in other states include voter ID laws, language barriers, and voter roll purges. In many states, including ours, voter registration can be difficult. Between figuring out where and when to register, as well as what materials, including proof of residency, are needed, the process of registering to vote can be confusing and overly burdensome. In the midst of the pandemic, this burden can be even larger as things are quickly changing. All of these barriers disproportionately affect people of color, young people, and people with lower incomes. Young people, specifically college students who are registered at their university but are now at home due to the pandemic, might be confused about what to do next. They might not know that they need to re-register to vote when they change their address. And in general, young people tend to be very mobile, and when moving from place to place, registering to vote may not be their main priority. Low-income individuals and young people might not have access to print their voter registration form and complete it. And due to unnecessary inequalities and barriers in our voting system, people of color are registered to vote at lower rates than white people, purged from the rolls at higher rates, and move more frequently at higher rates. These challenges have only been exacerbated by COVID-19. As you can see on the graph on this slide, voter registration rates in New Jersey are vastly lower than they were in the months leading up to the last presidential election in 2016. Before New Jersey went into lockdown in March, voter registration rates were actually higher in 2020 than in 2016. However, in the following months, those numbers drastically fell. The New Jersey presidential primary election in 2016 was on June 7th, so that you can see that May numbers skyrocketed to almost 45,000 new registered voters. The primary election in 2020 was on July 7th, and you can see that the May-June numbers were at an all-time low of under 3,000 new registered voters. Even though the numbers recovered in June and July, likely due to an uptick ahead of the July primary and the Black Lives Matter movement lifting up new ways people can become social justice warriors through voting, we still have not been able to make up the voter registration gap. New Jersey was supposed to have online voter registration set up in July. However, due to complications with COVID-19, it has been pushed back to September. Familiarizing an entire state with a new system of registering to vote less than a month before the voter registration deadline is a definite challenge. COVID-19 again causes complications due to people having economic and housing insecurity. With unemployment rates at an all-time low, more New Jerseyans than ever are unsure where they'll be laying their head in the coming months, whether they lose their home or have to relocate to a family member or a smaller residence. And this is also a huge problem for college students who are going back on campus and may be sent back to a parent's house or relocated due to another campus shutdown. And unfortunately, we don't have a real solution to this problem yet. Individuals who would have relied on in-person voter registration drives and other events to register to vote and learn more about the election no longer have that option. In-person voter registration is very necessary because it's not only about getting people registered, but also about having important conversations about the importance of voting, vote by mail, election deadlines, eligibility, and even the census and the importance of being counted. So these important in-person conversations have been severely hampered by the pandemic. And when someone visits one of these leagues' voter registration tables, they receive an experience. And this experience can mean learning more about the process and actually connecting with the communities that we're serving. More COVID-19 specific challenges include problems for individuals who might have gone to a public place to print out a voter registration form and now might not feel comfortable doing so, as well as individuals who are preoccupied with other things such as their health or their job in the midst of the pandemic and might not have time to keep up with all the changes to the election, whether that's regarding different options to vote or polling places changing or anything else. And because of this new challenge with COVID-19, it will take everyone working together to step up voter education efforts, or folks will be disenfranchised at the polls this November. And we at the League of Women Voters are so grateful to the participants here today, ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work. So when it comes to the nuts and bolts of voter education, it's important to take it on all fronts. First, do what you know. Ask yourself what your organization already does and is good at, and how you can incorporate voter education into that work. This can look like digital and in-person events, posting on social media, traditional organizing like phone banking or phone trees, and everything in between. Some examples of this can be starting in your own backyard. Talk to your own friends and family about voter registration and vote by mail. You are the most trusted person to the people that you're close with. And don't be afraid to, and don't forget to have these conversations in your own home and with the networks that you're already connected with. In-person events can look really different depending on what works for the people that you serve. The event can be specific to voter registration, in which case it would be like a voter registration table. But in the event that, the event could also be any community event that's already going on, like a drive-in movie, food truck events, cookouts, picnics, and everything in between. Go to where people will already be gathered for the highest possible turnout, but make sure that you're still maintaining all social distancing protocols. You might have to get a little bit more creative with online events. Many people are tired of Zoom calls and webinars, so they're picking and choosing the best events that they'd like to attend. Webinars talking directly with people seem to have the best impact, so try to make the online event more of a conversation. Some groups have had success with virtual block parties where the neighborhood gets together online to connect on the issues that are most important to them. If you are or have connections with a direct service organization like a food pantry or a soup kitchen, hold voter registration tables during the hours that people come to get food. It's a great way to connect with the most at-risk populations for being disenfranchised. And social media is not a tool to be taken for granted. As we get closer and closer to the election, people are going to be more motivated to share educational posts to make sure that their friends and family get information. You can create posts and graphics related to voter education to get out the word for the people who follow you. Even sending out an email blast to your list is a great way to get this info out. But if you don't have the capacity to create your own posts, you can check in with us at LWVNJ on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for accurate and up-to-date posts about what you need to know about the upcoming general election. And you are more than welcome to share our posts. And then lastly, phone banking is one of the most effective ways to reach voters without ever having to leave your home. If you have access to a van system, you can call voters and ask for their voting plan and ask if they have any questions about the upcoming general election, of course, making sure to stay nonpartisan. So get creative. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and we need to make sure that this information is getting out across the board by trying many different outreach methods. Please use the League as a resource as you depart on this voter education mission. Go to lwvnj.org to find guides to completing voter registration forms and a vote by mail application, find election deadlines, and up-to-date information on how the pandemic is affecting the general election. We're here to help you get accurate and concise information to the people that you serve.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. I'm going to just kind of quickly go through some broad strokes about voter registration, just so everybody has an understanding of who can register and how you register voters. I do want to say that as Alyssa mentioned, please consider us a resource. So if you decide that you're going to incorporate some of this, circle back with the league, and we can help make sure that you get all the answers you need. And if you would like to train some of your employees, we can help you there and make sure that you're completely confident before you go out into the community to register voters. So in New Jersey, you can register to vote if you are a US citizen. You can actually register to vote at 17, but you can't vote until you're actually 18. So those folks will be considered pre-registered, and then on their 18th birthday, they will be added to the voting rolls. You have to be a resident of your New Jersey county 30 days before the elections. When Alyssa talked a little bit about housing and security and mentioned these are places where we don't have great answers, this is one of the reasons why there are some requirements in our state for residency. And as folks move between counties, lose their homes, we're encountering more and more voters calling us saying, I don't know where I'm going to be in November. What do I do? People that are homeless can register to vote at a place where they commonly stay or at a place where they can receive their mail. So you can register to vote if you don't have a home using something like a park. But for a lot of the folks that are calling, they just don't know what their situation is going to be in a couple of months, and they want to make sure that they're not disenfranchised. And then new for New Jersey, you can now register to vote if you are on parole or probation. That rule went into effect March 17th, so pretty much exactly at the same time the state went into kind of shutdown mode. I remember because we had a lot of voter registration events planned for around that date to help individuals that were on parole and probation register and restore their voting rights, and they were all shut down. So this is another place that we're facing a challenge, reaching individuals on probation or parole to ensure that they're registered to vote for November. Go ahead, Alyssa. The voter registration deadline is October 13th. One of the resources that we have is we have a lot of resources on our sites, but we have things in all different formats because people learn in different ways. So an example is we just go through the voter registration form and explain each section. For folks that are registering voters, this is really helpful because these are the common questions that we receive at voter registration tables. I do just want to mention that we do not know what Governor Murphy's decision will be regarding the upcoming November general election. We should know soon, possibly tomorrow, exactly how the election will run. So a lot of what I am saying could change. The dates could change. When I get to vote by mail, that could change. But please follow the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. Please reach out as these things change. We will be sure to be informing people up to the minute on these changes and making sure everybody has the best information they can have prior to starting their voter education, registration, and vote by mail efforts. So to register, if your organization is going to do a voter registration drive, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can print out the forms yourself and copy them, or you can contact your county election official in the county that you're going to be doing this, so wherever you serve, and they'll provide you with a stack of voter registration forms that you can use. The forms are county specific. But there is a statewide form. So if you're registering at a place that you know will be attended by people all over the state, you might want to just use the statewide form. But if you're doing some county specific work, you can use those county forms. They have the addresses right on them. They're designed in a way to make it really simple. And as Alyssa mentioned previously, New Jersey doesn't have online voter registration yet. The legislation did pass. It was meant to go into effect in July, and it's been delayed. As far as we know, it's on track for early September. When that happens, that will also change how we register voters and the information we put out. You'll still need paper forms, you'll still need all the traditional material, but you'll probably be able to layer in some online voter registration efforts as well. So please stay tuned to the League for more information about that. Folks need to re-register if they change their name, if they change their address, or if they complete their sentence of incarceration. So if they're released from actually being incarcerated in prison, they need to re-register. Alyssa mentioned something about the conversations you have at voter registration tables. We find that most of the people that we come into contact with, except when we're targeting communities that are underserved, but when we're in community events like farmers markets or things like this, a lot of folks are registered to vote, but they're registered, they don't know where they're registered, or they didn't know they need to update their registration. They don't know how to apply for a vote by mail. So the re-register question comes up a lot. Alyssa, you can go to the next slide. And this is important. Voters can check their voter registration status. Unfortunately, this tool doesn't allow for you to see the exact address that people are registered at, but it usually gives us a heads up if somebody's registered in the wrong county. So we'll use this tool at a voter registration event. A person will put in their information, look up where they're registered, and they'll say, oh, it says I'm registered in Ocean County and I live in Monmouth County now. And it lets us know that they need to re-register, or their name won't appear at all, and they would have thought they were registered to vote incorrect, and they'd be incorrect. So we use this tool to encourage voters to check their voter registration status, and we check it for them as well. And this is from the New Jersey Division of Elections website. It's available on their website. Another tool that the League of Women Voters of New Jersey provides, actually League of Women Voters of the United States, this is available nationwide, is vote411.org. When a voter visits vote411.org, they input their address, and they can check their voter registration status. They can get information about deadlines. They can get information about registering to vote and applying for a vote by mail ballot. And they can also find out what's on their ballot. So the League of Women Voters asks candidates running for office policy questions, and then the candidates they respond, and those answers appear on Vote 411. So when the voter puts in their address, their ballot appears with the responses from the candidate. Go ahead. As I mentioned, we don't know how exactly the November election will run. We don't know if it's going to be similar to the primary election where voters automatically received a vote by mail ballot, or if folks are going to have to apply for a vote by mail ballot. But we do encourage people to vote by mail so that they can vote safely during the pandemic. This is a picture. I bring my daughter to vote with me every election, and I vote every election, school board, municipal, everything. So she's been to quite a few elections, polling places so far, but this was her first ballot box and my first ballot box experience. So I was glad that I was able to at least maintain that tradition of bringing my daughter, if not in a different way. You can go ahead, Alyssa. So in New Jersey, if folks have to apply for vote by mail, New Jersey is a pretty good vote by mail state. We are no excuse absentee balloting, meaning that anybody can apply for a vote by mail ballot. They don't have to provide a reason to apply. Like voter registration forms, vote by mail applications are available by county, but also like voter registration forms, which is a barrier, they have to be printed, signed, and mailed in. Folks can't do this online or electronically. Vote by mail applications also have confusing deadlines. If they're mailed in, they must be received, as in physically in the office in the hand of the county clerk 7 days before election day, or voters can return them in person up to 3 p.m. the day before election day. And again, that's under normal circumstances. I do not know what the deadlines are going to be for November, but we will post that as soon as the executive order is issued. We are encouraging folks to apply early. Don't wait till the last minute to fill out your vote by mail ballot. Once you receive it, vote as soon as you're confident in your choices. We do know that there is delays with the postal service, that there it's going to be a high turnout election, and if voters do have to apply for vote by mail ballots, county election officials are going to get a lot of applications closer to the deadline. So if you know right now that you're going to want to use a vote by mail ballot, please do apply for it. And then as soon as you get the ballots usually start going out mid to late September. Once you're confident in your choices, fill it out and return that ballot. The second phase of all of this really has to do with what we saw in the primary. Voter education is always important, always important. We spend a lot of time educating voters, no matter what the circumstance, to ensure that voters understand how to participate in elections and they're not left out of the system because they didn't have information. During the primary, after the election changed as a result of the pandemic, we had to adjust this voter education and we had to amplify it a lot. So things like that your organization might want to think about is helping voters understand vote by mail, helping voters understand what a provisional ballot is. If there's in-person voting options available, helping voters understand how to find their polling places that might have changed, what to expect at the polling places during a pandemic, and making sure that all this information that you're offering is tailored to the communities you serve. So what will resonate with the people you are trying to reach? And again, partner. Please partner with us. As Linda mentioned in the beginning, you want to be careful that you're partnering with C3 organizations that do not, the league is very, very, very strict about this. So we don't partner with organizations that endorse candidates even on their C4 side. We stick to C3 organizations like ours that do not support or oppose candidates. And we try to partner to reach as many different communities as possible. So please consider us a resource. It's going to be a heavy lift for the entire nonprofit community, as well as the state and the county election officials. We're all going to have to work together to make sure that voters have all the information they need. Nobody wants to see voting rights become another victim of the COVID-19 pandemic. So please reach out and partner with appropriate folks so that we can do this work together. And again, if you have questions, reach out to us, contact us. We are here for you. There's nothing we like better than doing this work. It's our core mission, and we are available to your organizations to help do this in any way you think will reach the people that you work with.
Yeah, and again, please make sure to follow or join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at LWVNJ. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, I'm Alyssa Moreno, and my email is right on the screen. So yeah, please reach out.
So much for all this really, really important and timely and helpful information. There's a lot there to unpack. Don't know if people have questions, so let's pause and see if they do.
C4 organizations partner, and I believe, Jesse, you did go over that.
So I think probably Linda could be clear. I can tell you the league, we follow really strict nonpartisan regulations outside of even what's required of us. I don't know if that's one of the things that is definitely required. So the league has a 501c3 and a 501c4, but our 501c4 does not support or oppose candidates. We don't use our C4 to do that. It's our member organization is within our C4. Our C3 does our voter education. So what I was referencing is there's a lot of organizations like ours that have a C3 and a C4, and their C4 does endorse or oppose candidates. We don't really partner with those organizations in our voter education work, more so because we don't want to even appear partisan at all. We're very careful about that. I don't know if that's something maybe Linda could speak to, if you're allowed to partner with a C3 that has a C4 that does endorse.
I mean, in a nutshell, the idea is you cannot be using your C3's resources, name, et cetera, to do anything to directly or indirectly promote a candidate or a party. So, you know, as Jesse said, if you're working with a C4 that is not doing that, that's perhaps working on a ballot question or something like that, and again, not legal advice and all of that, but if you're working on that in that kind of capacity, then you probably, you know, there are things that you can do. You just want to keep your C3's resources completely insulated from any activity that's promoting or the election or defeat of a candidate or a party. There is a great resource from the Alliance for Justice called The Connection. It's a comprehensive book that talks about how C3s and C4s can work together, how C4s can work with PACs and all sorts of things. So if you really want to get more sophisticated into this stuff, that's a great resource, and we will send you the link to how to get that. It's a free ebook that you just have to provide your name and email, and then you can get that resource. But that's, you know, there are a lot of things that you can do with C4s, but you just have to be careful about how you do it.
Okay, we are getting quite a few questions, and just a reminder, if we don't get to everybody on this webinar, we will send you a follow-up, but I'll just go through a couple of them here. If a person requested a mail-in ballot for the recent primary, do they also need to request a mail-in ballot for the general election, or will that come in the mail automatically?
Okay, so to complicate things, we don't know if people are going to, if everybody is going to be automatically sent vote by mail ballots, every eligible voter. We don't know yet.
Mhm.
Now, if we operate under the assumption that people are going to have to apply for vote by mail ballots, there's kind of two tracks here that happen in the primary. The governor's executive order said that everybody was, all registered R's and D's, all active registered R's and D's received a vote by mail ballot automatically. If that's your bucket, you received one without applying for it, you will not, you're not added to the list to automatically receive them going forward. However, in New Jersey, you can apply for vote by mail ballots and to receive them for all elections going forward. So some people are already on that list where they will receive and already do receive vote by mail ballots automatically going forward. I know this is confusing. It'll be a lot less confusing after I know if we're going to receive these ballots automatically, if everybody's going to receive them automatically. We have received that question a lot, and really what we have to do is have the voter contact their county election official to find out if they are on the list to automatically receive ballots, a list that exists normally. But you would not have been added to that list simply by receiving that ballot automatically for the primary, because that was a special circumstance.
Okay, another question, just to clarify, does sharing information, assisting with voter registration, or helping people find polling places qualify as lobbying?
It's not lobbying, and you can do it as part of a nonpartisan voter engagement effort. What you can't do is be selective about who you're going to provide information to, or you can target disadvantaged or disenfranchised, historically disenfranchised populations, but you can't, for example, decide that you're only going to target people who are going to vote for a particular party or who you think are going to vote a different way. But so assuming you keep the nonpartisan edicts intact, you can do it. It's not lobbying, it is nonpartisan voter registration or voter engagement. The part that's lobbying is if you decide that you want to get involved with influencing the outcome of a ballot question. So for example, we've got the question on the ballot that's going to ask voters whether we should legalize marijuana in the state of New Jersey. If that cause is important to you and you decide that you want to use your organization's resources to promote that cause and encourage voters to vote for it, you can do it. But it's lobbying, which means you have to track what you're doing, you have to track how much you spend, and there are limits to for 501c3 as to how much you can do. And if you spend more than $1,600 to do this, then you have to register and report to ELEC. So the difference is if you're influencing a ballot question, it's lobbying. If you're engaged in nonpartisan voter registration and engagement to get people out to the polls, that's not lobbying.
Okay, a little bit more clarification on the C4s. It's Kiwanis, Rotary, and other community groups that the question was asked.
I guess the answer would remain the same. I'm not familiar enough to know if they work on campaigns and endorse candidates and things like that. So you have to look carefully into the circumstances. If you are going to partner with a C4, or if it's your own C4, you want to document everything, and so that you can show that you're protecting and insulating your C3 from anything that might be considered partisan or electioneering. Again, there's I'll send you the link to the connection from Alliance for Justice, and that has a lot of really, really good information.
And here's a question, something we like to talk about. Does the Center for Nonprofits and League of Women Voters partner with Census to promote the census? Is there a statewide partnership?
I'll start, but I know that the league has been very active on this. In fact, you beat me to one of the calls to action at the end. We are active in the Census the 2020 Coalition. Advocates for Children of New Jersey is coordinating a lot of that work on the state level for nonprofits and other stakeholders. And we, in an upcoming slide in just a minute or two, we'll provide a link to that. But we've been trying very hard to encourage nonprofits to be involved, to get out the count. It's winding down, and of course, as many of you heard, right now the deadline for census field work has been pulled back by a month, so that's pending some court challenges, I believe. But yes, we are involved. We encourage anybody who has not been involved yet to do so. There's still a lot that can be done, and some of you may have been on the governor's get out the count rally call mid today. So there may be some good information that came out of that. Jesse, you want to talk about the league?
Yeah, sure. So Alyssa with us was actually brought on specifically to help with the census. She did not know that she was also going to deal with the pandemic, of course, but some of the stuff that Alyssa does, not that I want to speak for her, she's on the call, so that's a little rude, but she has been great at putting together resources for voter registration and census together. So things that you can have on the table that encourage participation in democracy, that include both registering to vote and making sure that you're counted. So if folks are interested in those kind of resources, please reach out, and Alyssa can help. Alyssa, did you want to say anything? I spoke for you.
It's okay. Yeah, I would just say that, like, if you are partaking on this voter education path, like, I would highly encourage you to also include census information with everything that you're putting out. Both are nonpartisan issues, so it's completely okay to combine the two. Just making sure that the only difference is that you can't undocumented residents cannot register to vote, but everyone can fill out the census. So, just reminding people that it's safe, it's easy, and it's important, and everyone has the right to be counted. So
yeah, I think that's it.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all for those questions, and thank you again, Jesse and Alyssa, for the extraordinary work that you're doing and for everything that the League does. And it is a joy to partner with you. Before we wrap up, I do have a couple of calls to action, one of which has already been mentioned, but let's go to this one first. If you are on the center's email, Susan, do you have?
We have a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to address these at the end that came in. I didn't really give people time to type in, I guess.
Go ahead. We have time. We have a little bit of time.
Okay, recommendations for college students. I know this is one that's a little bit up in the air with more students being home. Can we elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Alyssa, do you want me to take it, or do you want to? I'll take it. So, we asked our local leagues to kind of let us know what kind of questions they're getting on the ground, and this is one of the really common ones with college students not knowing how they are going to participate in November. So every individual college student seems to have a different situation. One of the things that folks, if they know they're going to be staying home and not returning to campus, then they can register here and apply for the vote by mail ballot at the address where they're staying here in New Jersey. If they are not sure if they're going to be returning to campus, then they need to, that's where it gets questionable because they don't know where to have their vote by mail ballot sent. And they don't know when they're going to do it. So that's one of the places where we're trying to figure out what the best advice is. Alyssa is putting together a fact sheet for college students, which kind of just lays out all the different possibilities. Like if this is you, a flow chart, then these are your options, because it is really complicated on the ground right now with students being unsure of where they'll be. And it's not just November 3rd, because remember, ballots start getting sent out mid to late September. So they're not really sure if they should have them sent to their school or if they should have them sent home. Alyssa, am I missing anything on that?
I don't think so. I think like as soon as we have materials and graphics ready, like they will be up on all of our social media channels and on our website. So I would just say like be sure to look out for that.
Great. And we'll be sharing that information too when you have it. So somebody said that they're sorry that they were late to the webinar. Perhaps we already covered this, the difference between absentee and vote by mail.
Really what it boils down to is that there's not a difference. I think technically that there could be some kind of definition, but that makes a difference, but there's not. New Jersey, we used to call this absentee ballot. Once it became a no excuse situation, we started just referencing it as vote by mail or mail-in ballot. It's really just a change of terminology. A lot of folks don't, you can cast either of them through the mail. They're the same exact ballot. They look the same. There's no real difference between vote by mail, mail-in, or absentee. These are interchangeable terms. And actually, when we moved away from the saying absentee in New Jersey, I've been doing this 13 years. I feel like this happened about a decade ago, and we still have folks just use all the three terms interchangeably because there really is no difference. And the by mail part, I think, is a little bit misleading because you can cast these in person at your county election official's office. You can drop them off. The primary, we have ballot box, drop box, ballot drop box is available. So it's not, you don't have to send them through the mail. It's just terminology, different terms for what is basically the same exact thing.
I don't see any more questions, but just a reminder that you will get everybody's contact information and you can reach out to any of us individually. We'll also have some follow-up information in the email we send out. So, Linda?
Great. Thank you again. Thanks for all those great questions, and thank you again to Jesse and Alyssa. A couple of things, we're winding down, but a couple of really important alerts that I want to call to your attention. If you're on the center's email address list, you would have received this, or if you're following us on social media, you would have seen this. We are organizing a sign-on letter to ask the governor and the legislature to provide additional relief for nonprofits. We know that the pandemic has hit nonprofits very, very hard across the board. And so we're making a few specific requests, things like obviously additional funding, asking them to pass a charitable giving deduction, which has a state level charitable giving deduction, which has gone through the Senate, passed unanimously, and needs some help in the Assembly. Helping out nonprofit employers in terms of unemployment liabilities and that they may be facing. Providing more contract flexibility for those of you that have government contracts, and providing some flexibility with respect to extensions for the reports that you have to file with the state, with charities registration, and with the Department of Treasury. We have a sign-on deadline of August 19th. Signing on is easy. The link is there, and we'll resend it in the follow-up information. But if you are able to sign on, that would be fabulous, because we need to show give the legislature a good show of support from the nonprofit community. So hope you will consider that. I don't think we mentioned it, but September 22nd, 2020 is National Voter Registration Day. It's a great way to coordinate and mobilize your efforts together with others across the country. This website, nationalvoterregistrationday.org, has a lot of great resources and information. If you would like to check that out, we will also send that in the follow-up information. These are some of the voter engagement resources that we referenced during the call. The IRS and the Election Law Enforcement Commission are, of course, the government entities that enforce this stuff. And then, of course, there's contact information for Nonprofit Vote, Boulder Advocacy, which is a project of the Alliance for Justice, and the League of Women Voters, and the Center. And as has already been stressed, if you want to help New Jersey, one of the really most important things to do is to fill out your census if you haven't already done so, and help to encourage others to do the same. We are coming down to the wire, but there's so much at stake here for the next 10 years, and it's one of the most important ways that you can help New Jersey in addition to voting. As I said, Advocates for Children of New Jersey coordinates the Get Out the Count effort on the private side in New Jersey. The site is census2020nj.org, so please check that out if you haven't done it. There's links to all sorts of tools and information. Finally, this is the center's social media information. Please follow us there. Sometimes you'll see information there before we can get it out in an e-blast or on our website. So we hope that you will connect with us there, join our email list, and connect with us on these various platforms. Finally, we are at the end of the hour, but I want to thank you all for everything that you're doing to make our state better, to keep us strong, keep us safe. Our deep, deep thanks to Jesse Burns and Alyssa Moreno from the League of Women Voters, and to the League for everything that you're doing. Thanks to my colleagues, Susan O'Connor, Caitlin Giles McCormick, and Kathy Hahn, and everybody on the center's team. And we hope you'll stay safe. We hope you will stay in touch. And we look forward to seeing you virtually or someday in person soon.